So the Switch 2 is just a little over 9 months old as of the time of this recording, and I've had a blast with the system. I am just having so much fun playing all of the new games that are coming out, going back to old Switch 1 games and playing them through backwards compatibility because a lot of them have gotten frame rate boosts or even resolution bumps, and they just play so much better now on the Switch 2. Like I said, just been having so much fun with the system, but there's no denying there has been a lot of controversy surrounding the Switch 2 as well. Lots of negativity on social media, things like that. A lot of people say that the Switch 2 is too expensive, the games are possibly too expensive, and I think some of that is valid. Those arguments are definitely understandable. But a lot of people have also been saying there's just not enough content in the Switch 2's first year to justify a purchase. And that's kind of what I want to talk about in this video today. I wanted to compare the first year of the Switch 1 versus the first year of the Switch 2, specifically from Nintendo themselves. Only Nintendo published games, nothing from third parties in this comparison. Now, I wanted to do this comparison because a lot of people consider the Switch 1 to have had one of the greatest first years for any console launch in history, and I think that's justified. I think that's a totally reasonable argument to make because there was so many bangers on the Switch 1 in its first year. But I think the Switch 2 is comparable to the Switch 1's first year and maybe even better. Obviously, a lot of that will come down to personal preference in terms of what games you like and what types of games you like. But I really think the Switch 2's first year has a lot of overlap with the Switch 1 in terms of the types of games that came out. So, like I said, I just wanted to compare the two libraries after the first year. And I know the Switch 2, like I mentioned in the beginning, is only 9 months old at this point. But I think we have a good idea of what the library will look like after the first year is over for the Switch 2. I don't think there's going to be any new announcements or any shadow drops from Nintendo specifically in the next few months. So we know exactly what games are coming out, so we can pretty much do that comparison. The way I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to go through the Switch 2 games in release order, and when I can, compare them to similar Switch 1 games from its first year, and we're going to put all the games into two different categories. First, there's going to be the true exclusives, the games that you can only play on the Switch 1 or the Switch 2 when they came out. And then the second category is going to be ports or cross-generation titles. So ports are going to be games that came from the previous generation console. So for the Switch, it's going to be the Wii U, and for the Switch 2, it's going to be the Switch 1. And then cross-generation titles means like a game that basically came out simultaneously on the Switch and the Switch 2 at the same time, or like on the Wii U and the Switch at the same time. So we're going to do that. We're going to put games into those two categories and kind of see how many games there are and the quality and the quantity. So the first game we're going to be talking about, I actually have the Switch game here, 1-2 Switch. An absolute banger. But what are we going to compare it to on the Switch 2? Well, that would be Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. Now, the reason I'm comparing these two is I think they try to achieve the same thing, and that they're trying to show off the features of each system to their fullest. So the Switch 1, you had 1-2 Switch with the HD Rumble, motion controls, the two Joy-Con controllers. Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, you have the mouse and all those different features that both these games try to show off. And Welcome Tour got just absolutely blasted when it was revealed in the original Switch 2 Direct, because people saw this game and they were like, wow, that looks like an interesting manual for the system. And then they announced that it was a paid game. $10. Everyone went crazy over that because they thought this game should have been a pack-in. And, you know, I tend to agree that I think it would have been better as a pack-in. But I feel like not as many people complained about 1-2 Switch when this came out. There was so much hype around 1-2 Switch. People don't remember this, but people were generally excited about 1-2 Switch before the Switch came out. Nintendo held a lot of events where they had the press come out and play 1-2 Switch. There were so many videos to come from You know, people playing the Milk game, that was obviously a huge hit. The Draw game was definitely another huge hit. And 1-2 Switch was $50. Now, this is absolutely more of a game that I think should have been packed in with the Switch 1 to begin with. And I think over time, obviously, people don't view 1-2 Switch in as highly, in as high a regard as they did back then. Not that they held the game in high regard, but there just wasn't as many complaints from what I remember for 1-2 Switch back then. Whereas Welcome Tour, just like I said, got blasted and basically became a laughingstock. Where I disagree is actually, I love Welcome Tour. I think Welcome Tour has so much cool information, and yeah, it might only be like interesting for people that are really interested in the tech of behind the Switch 2, learning about that stuff. There's a bunch of like very silly quizzes and things like that you have to do. But I genuinely also think the mini games in Welcome Tour are so much fun. They're replayable, and you know, there's not a lot of depth in the mini games, but there's plenty of them there, and there's a lot of things to play around with. So I don't know, for a $10 game on the eShop, I actually really enjoyed Welcome Tour, and comparing the two, like 100% way more worth it for $10 than 1-2 Switch ever was at $50. At least in my opinion. 1-2 Switch I also had fun with. Definitely played this game a few times at launch and had a blast, especially, you know, playing the marble game. That was a really fun time to really check out the HD Rumble for the first time on the Switch. We also obviously love the milking game. I like the ping pong game a lot. That was really cool. You didn't have to look at the TV at all, and that was kind of also another thing with 1-2 Switch, was that you kind of didn't have to use the actual screen of the Switch or the TV at all. You could just play the game using your ears and your, you know, the sense of touch and things like that. So both of these games are cool in their own ways, but both of them are also games that I kind of wish were packed in. Now, they are both true exclusives though, brand new games to come out for the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, so we're going to put those in the exclusive category. Next, we have two of the biggest games for their respective consoles, obviously Mario Kart World for the Switch 2 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the original Switch. Now, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it just has sold an unbelievable amount on the Switch 1. I think the attach rate is something like 1 in every 2 people have this game. And Mario Kart World is similar because they decided to bundle this game in with the Switch 2 at launch. So you could technically get this game for $50 if you bought it with that bundle. Otherwise, if you bought physical, like I did, it would have been $80. But either way, both of these games are fantastic. I think they're really, really good releases for each system. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is obviously a port of the Wii U game, Mario Kart 8, with the DLC, so it does have that added content. Whereas Mario Kart World is a completely brand new game built from the ground up for the Switch 2. And I think Mario Kart World doesn't get enough credit. I think it's an amazing game. So many new mechanics that were added to this, and it's huge. I think just the world of the game is awesome. The thing I like about it that a lot of people just kind of don't really talk about a lot is the open world single player aspect of the game. So many people kind of came out during launch talking about that adventure mode, saying that it was completely unnecessary and they wished it wasn't even in the game. Whereas I spent so much time in that single player mode doing all the missions. Maybe it's because I loved Mario Kart DS so much, and the mission mode in that game was my favorite single player mode in any Mario Kart game until Mario Kart World came out. Now, this, in my opinion, has the best single player of any Mario Kart to date. Knockout Tour is great. Playing the online is a lot of fun. Now, I do think a lot of people were right in talking about the intermission courses being not as fun as playing just the regular 3 laps courses, which is fair, but I do think the intermission courses do add a ton of variety within the track design. So you could go through each course, like so many different routes because of the intermission courses, so that added a lot of variety to the tracks. Mario Kart 8 is a known product. It was such a good game, and I'm not going to talk about the extra tracks that they added because those didn't come until later, but even at release when this came out on the Switch, there was still a ton of content, so many tracks, so many great tracks. It's just a great game. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was probably my favorite Mario Kart game, and it might still be. I don't know, especially with all the tracks that they added, it might still be my favorite Mario Kart game. But I love Mario Kart World as well, and the music. I gotta mention the music in Mario Kart World. So much music. It's insane how much there is in this game. And Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, not a slouch in that department either. Fantastic music. So, two fantastic games, two incredible games for the first year of each system. This one, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, is a port, so we're going to add that to the port section. And Mario Kart World is a brand new game, so we're going to add that to the exclusive section for the Nintendo Switch 2. Another absolutely massive release, we have The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for the Switch 1. This was why you would buy a Switch 1 at launch. Almost everybody bought this for launch. Yes, it did come out on the Wii U as well, but pretty much everyone I knew was going to play it on the Switch. And Nintendo decided to release it again on the Switch 2 as a Switch 2 edition, along with Tears of the Kingdom. So I'm kind of putting these all together since they're all Zelda games, but man, what can you say? Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite games of all time. One of my favorite Zelda games of all time. You know, I go back and forth, but just such a phenomenal game. I had just an incredible experience with Breath of the Wild because when this game came out, I was living with a couple friends, and we all experienced this together in the same household. We would be going to each other's rooms and being like, "Yo, did you see this? Did you see this?" It was something that I just don't think I've ever experienced since, and when I had played the game, I hadn't experienced that since I was a kid. I can't say enough good things about Breath of the Wild. Now, the Switch 2 edition of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, fantastic transitions. They're both 4K. They run at 60 FPS now, which is amazing. These games have never looked better. They've never played better, but they don't really have too many upgrades. I think like the two games do have some companion app that you can use, and they do have those visual upgrades, but I really can't say too much more about Breath of the Wild. Just once again, unbelievable game. One of the reasons why the Switch 1 is considered to have one of the best first years of all time is because it has one of the best games of all time on it, and you know, the Switch 2 technically also has it. So if you're buying a Switch 2 and you never owned a Switch 1 or a Wii U, you have two of the greatest games of all time to play at launch, which was freaking awesome. That was amazing. So really cool to have those there. Breath of the Wild is a cross-gen title. As I mentioned, it came out on the Wii U as well. So we're going to put that in the ports/cross-gen section. And these two are obviously also going to go in the ports section for the Switch 2. So both added to the ports, but still incredible. Basically, Breath of the Wild is kind of like an exclusive, but we gotta be fair. So amazing games. So now we're getting out of the launch period of the Switch 2 with Donkey Kong Bonanza, and we're gonna be looking at that obviously compared to Super Mario Odyssey because these two games were developed by the same teams within Nintendo. And again, just unbelievable games and unbelievable titles to have for the first year of your system. Donkey Kong Bonanza was my game of the year last year. I adore this game. I think it has some of the most fun mechanics of any 3D platformer/action game that I've ever played. Mario Odyssey, one of my favorite 3D Mario games ever made. Such an incredible journey through different worlds. Cappy being able to transform into different enemies. So much fun. Just such great mechanics. Both of these games are incredible. Donkey Kong Bonanza, I think, actually has a better ending. I think the ending of Bonanza is just one of the best endings I've ever seen in a Nintendo game. gosh, I wish I could spoil it. I'm not going to spoil it here, obviously, there's people that haven't played this game, but if you don't have a Switch 2 and you're planning on getting one in the future, just look forward to Bonanza. It's so good. And Mario Odyssey, again, so many amazing moments. Obviously, Jump Up Superstar, going through New Donk City was so much fun. So many different worlds. The only like negative thing I can say about Mario Odyssey is that there were a couple of those small worlds that didn't really have too much to them, but that's barely even a negative. Both of these are just pretty close to 10 out of 10 games for me in terms of 3D platformers go. And both of them are brand new titles for their respective systems. So this is an exclusive for the Switch, an exclusive for the Switch 2. Fantastic games, just awesome. Next for the Switch 2, we have Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Jamboree TV. That's quite a mouthful, but this is a re-release of Mario Party Jamboree, obviously, for the Switch 2, but it does have exclusive features as seen by this Jamboree TV section. This was one of those games where you utilize the camera of the Switch 2 that is not used very much other than for game chat, I suppose, and also different features like the microphone, things like that. So they added some extra mini games, and for the Switch 1, I'm just going to put Flip Wars here because I don't know where else to add Flip Wars. Flip Wars is kind of a party game, and then you got Mario Party here. I don't actually own Flip Wars. This is pretty much the only Nintendo game on the Switch 1 from its first year that I don't own, I think. It just seems like a single Mario Party minigame that was released as its own game. A lot of people forget about Flip Wars. I even forgot about Flip Wars when I created, I made this comparison for social media before, trying to compare the first years of the Switch 1 and Switch 2. I forgot Flip Wars on there. So, very forgettable game. I don't think it was very highly regarded either. But, it's part of the Switch 1's first year from Nintendo, so we're going to add it. And Mario Party Jamboree, I think this is a fantastic Mario Party game. I think they oversold it a little bit. Before the game came out, before the game came out on Switch 1, they were talking about how it had the most minigames out of any Mario Party to date. It was true, but a lot of those minigames were actually part of different modes. They weren't actually part of the main Mario Party mode, so they oversold it a little bit. This release for the Switch 2, it's pretty fun. They upgraded the visuals and a little bit, and they added the Jamboree TV. The Jamboree TV stuff is okay, but it doesn't add a whole lot to the package, so it's fun if you didn't play the game to begin with, or if you just wanted like an extra bonus mode and you have the game already on Switch 1. It's a nice little thing to get with Jamboree TV, but nothing amazing. But yeah, so this is a port. Super Mario Jamboree, we're going to count that as a port, even though it has new content. And Flip Wars is an exclusive for the Switch 1. It was an exclusive and a brand new game, so there's another one for the Switch 1. After Super Mario Party Jamboree came Drag and Drive. Now, a lot of people also kind of clown on this game, but I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I'll talk about that, but I am going to bring up ARMS here for the Switch 1 as the game that will kind of compare with Drag and Drive or talk about in the same light. I don't actually know if there's overlap between the development teams of ARMS and Drag and Drive. I think there is, which is also another reason why I wanted to kind of put these two games together, and they're both competitive multiplayer games. ARMS is definitely more of a full-fledged release. This was a fighting game. They showed this off during the Nintendo Switch, the original Nintendo Switch reveal with all the other games, and super cool concept. I actually really, really enjoy ARMS. I think this is a great game. Great way to kind of, make a unique fighting game that kind of nobody has ever done, and motion controls were fun. I used the controller most of the time when I play this game, but I think the motion controls worked really well too. The characters were fun, the stages were cool. There was actually some lore to ARMS as well, which was interesting. And they added new stuff as time went on. Drag and Drive. I think the core gameplay of Drag and Drive is super fun. And again, similar to ARMS, it does something interesting with the controller. So it uses the mouse mode of the Joy-Con 2 controllers to actually, move the wheels of these little wheelchairs for these basketball players, and it feels really good. I think it just works super well, and it's really fine-tuned. Being able to play this game well is actually one of the most satisfying feelings I've had in a video game in a long time. Just going up for like a block and being able to absolutely stuff someone, going up for a dunk or going up for a shot, it just feels so good, and like shooting feels great. Drag and Drive is a lot of fun, but there's just not a lot of content. That's the problem. And it is an online game. It is focused on the online multiplayer, but there's also not a lot of great multiplayer options in terms of ranking. You can't play as a team with your friends. I think that's crazy. Don't know why they did that. But overall, I just really do enjoy Drag and Drive. There's a lot of fun little mini games in there too. I wish there was more of that stuff. I wish there was more mini games and things like that. So, yeah, I enjoy Drag and Drive quite a bit. This is a $20 downloadable game. ARMS was actually a full-priced $60 release, and I don't know if it should have been. Maybe it should have been $50. Maybe it should have been $40. But either way, I like ARMS as well. I think it's a cool game, similar to Drag and Drive. I like both these games. And both of them are brand new exclusive titles. ARMS, brand new for the Switch 1. Drag and Drive, brand new for the Switch 2. Both cool games in my opinion. And then we have another Switch 2 edition in Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus Starcross World. This one I don't have anything to really compare it with on the Switch 1, so we're going to just talk about it here. Star Allies I could have brought in here and been nice to the Switch 1. But Star Allies actually came out a couple weeks after the end of the first year of the Switch 1, so I'm not counting that in this comparison. This is the only Kirby game that either the system's got in its first year, unless you count one of the ones that's coming up in a bit, but we'll talk about that later. Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Starcross World. This is really cool. Forgotten Land is just a fantastic Kirby game, a great way to bring Kirby into 3D. And Starcross World was a fun addition to the game as well. It's not super long, which sucks, but in terms of like Nintendo Switch 2 editions and what they added, it's a little more substantial than something like Jamboree TV, I think. So better frame rate as well, better resolution, runs at 60 FPS now. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a great game. It is a port though, so we'll add it to the port section for the Switch 2, and we'll move on to the next game. That next game being Pokemon Legends ZA Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. And we have, for the Switch 1, Pokken Tournament DX, because this is the only Pokemon game we can really compare with Pokemon Legends ZA on the Switch 2. So, Legends ZA, I actually have not played a lot of this yet, so I don't have a lot to say. I will say, though, that I do really, really enjoy the combat in this game. I think the way that it evolves the combat of Pokemon is one of the coolest things I've seen done in the Pokemon series in a while. Turn-based combat is fantastic, but the fact that they did this whole real-time combat that is somewhat turn-based in a way as well, it's almost like the active time battle system in some of those older Final Fantasy games, which is really cool. So, looking forward to playing more of Legends ZA. I think it's a cool game. And then we got Pokken Tournament DX. This is a fighting game that was ported from the Wii U. Really weird game. I think I don't know if it originally came out in the arcade, but there was also an arcade version of this. And yeah, Pokemon translated into a fighting game. I never thought I would see that. Then this adds the DLC from Pokken Tournament, so you do have that. Pokemon Legends ZA, the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, adds better frame rate, better resolution. So both of them kind of added a little bit more. This is considered a cross-gen title, Pokemon Legends ZA. We'll count it as a cross-gen title since it did come out on the Switch 1 as well. And Pokken Tournament DX will be counted as a port. So we'll add that to the port and cross-gen category since they're the same in this comparison. Two cool games. Moving on to the next one. Next, we have two Warriors games, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment on the Switch 2 and Fire Emblem Warriors on the Switch 1. I did play Fire Emblem Warriors a bit when it first came out, and I thought it was pretty fun and really liked how they added some strategy in it that was kind of like similar to what you'd find in the Fire Emblem games. So, cool game. Didn't beat it or anything, didn't play a ton of it. But I haven't played any of Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment yet. From what I hear, this is a really, really good Warriors game and one of the best crossovers in terms of Warriors games as well. I think Nintendo came out and said that this specifically is canon to the story of Tears of the Kingdom and the Zelda universe, whereas the previous Hyrule Warriors games, the previous game, Age of Calamity, I believe, was kind of not canon. It was its own thing. So they made sure to say that this was indeed canon. And like I said, from what I hear, it's great. Both Warriors games, though, both fun if you just like that sort of hack and slash, turn your brain off style gameplay. Hyrule Warriors, though, really cool that it actually runs at 60 FPS. None of the Warriors games on the Switch 1 actually ran at 60 FPS from what I know. Maybe there were sections that ran at 60 FPS, but they were not consistent at all. Hyrule Warriors did get a definitive edition on the Switch 1, the first Hyrule Warriors game, but that didn't come until, I think, year 2 or 3. So Fire Emblem Warriors and Hyrule Warriors. This is actually interesting. Like, do we count Fire Emblem Warriors as an exclusive, or do we count it as a cross-gen title because it came out on the 3DS as well? I really don't know. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to put it as an exclusive for the Switch. And this Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is also a brand new exclusive game for the Nintendo Switch 2. You can't play it anywhere else. So, going to be nice to the Switch 1, and we're going to put both of these into the exclusive section. Alright, and after Hyrule Warriors actually came Kirby Air Riders. What a cool release here. We're just going to have Splatoon 2 here to talk about along with Kirby Air Riders. Kind of both multiplayer focused games with single player modes as well, but Splatoon 2, sequel to one of the Wii U's breakout hits in Splatoon 1, was awesome to see a brand new game in the Splatoon series come out during the first year of the Switch 1, and this was a great game. It was very iterative of the Switch 1 version of Splatoon. They did add, I think, this added Salmon Run for the first time, which was a really, really awesome mode. I loved Salmon Run. But for the most part, it was a very similar game. Kirby Air Riders, also similar to its prequel or the previous game in its series, Kirby Air Rider on the GameCube, but like I said, that was a GameCube game. We never expected to get another Kirby Air Riders game, I don't think. I certainly didn't. And to be honest, I was never actually a big fan of the original Kirby Air Rider game on the GameCube. Like, the racing itself just didn't really do it for me, and I know a lot of people like City Trial, but I don't know. I just couldn't get into the game, but Kirby Air Riders is so much fun, and there's so much content in the game as well, from the single-player adventure mode to the multiplayer stuff. There's just so much to do in Kirby Air Riders. It is a fantastic game. Sakurai absolutely poured his heart out into this, as he does with pretty much every game that he works on. And this just adds another racing game to the first year of the Switch 2. There were quite a few. Obviously, we're not going to talk about here, but Sonic also had a racing game come out for the Switch 2 during the first year. Just so much amazing fun to be had with both these games, Kirby Air Riders and Splatoon 2. These are both great games, both brand new exclusive releases for their system. So Splatoon 2 added to the exclusive section, Kirby Air Riders also added to the exclusive section for the Switch 2. Again, awesome games. In December, after Kirby Air Riders, we had Metroid Prime 4 Beyond Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. This was one of my most anticipated games that I can think of. I was so excited for this game. Man, I could do a whole video about this itself, but let's just say it's both one of the most disappointing games of all time for me, and also I still like it. So it's so weird. It's so weird to talk about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. But to bring in a couple Switch games here, we have Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 1. So I'm adding both of these here because Bayonetta 2 came out during the launch year of the Switch 1, and it included Bayonetta as a full game download. This is just a physical copy of Bayonetta 1 that came out later. Have both of those here. These two games, Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2, incredible. Some of the best action games ever made. I love them. So good. It's just so good. They are ports, though. These were both on the Wii U. Bayonetta 2 was a Wii U exclusive when it came out. They ported it over to the Switch, and I'm glad that they did because more people needed to play these games. Love Bayonetta. But really, let's talk about Metroid Prime 4 a little more here. Again, I like the game. I think it's fine. I think it's like a 7.5, 8 out of 10. Incredible visuals, incredible atmosphere still, but wow, the gameplay was so disappointing for me as a Metroid Prime fan. Metroid Prime 1 is my favorite game of all time, if you didn't know. This game was just... the level design, it was so linear. It was lacking a lot of the lore that I really love in Prime games as well. The psychic abilities really didn't add too much. They were kind of just a way to add power-ups for Samus, you know? I do think like the NPCs were not that bad. Obviously, everyone talks about Miles being annoying, and he kind of is in the overworld a little bit. But just overall, that's not the worst part of the game. That's not the part of the game that's upsets me. It's more the level design and how they have progression move in such a linear fashion. Man, again, I beat this game twice. I beat it in hard mode. I beat it in normal mode. I enjoyed it, but it's still such a disappointment. Anyway, it's a cool release for the Switch 2 during its first year. I think it's really interesting and fun to have a Metroid game during the first year of the Switch 2's launch. But again, you know, I just saying what I think about it. So we'll add Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 both to the ports section for the Switch, and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is a cross-gen title because it took so long to develop. It was originally coming out for the Switch 1, and they released it on the Switch 1 and Switch 2. So it's a cross-gen title / port, so we're going to add it to the cross-gen / port section. Animal Crossing New Horizons Nintendo Switch 2 Edition was also another kind of surprise release for the Switch 2. I think they kind of just announced it out of nowhere, out of the blue. And this is obviously one of the most popular games on the original Switch. This just blew up when it came out. It kind of came out at the perfect time when the pandemic was starting, and everyone was playing this. Everyone and their mother was playing Animal Crossing New Horizons. So it does make sense that Nintendo would release a Nintendo Switch 2 edition for those that maybe didn't play the game on the Switch 1, all like 10 of those people. But they did add some new features. Along with the Switch 2 edition, they also added a full update for the Switch 1. And the Switch 2 edition added features like mouse mode to, you know, move furniture around, which is cool. I think that's a great feature. And they added, you know, better visuals, higher frame rates, faster loading, things like that. So cool release for people that, you know, want to play Animal Crossing on the Switch 2. The upgrade was only $5 as well, so really not that bad. And for people that wanted to play it for the first time, they could pick it up on the Switch 2. So cool release. We'll add it to the port section on the Switch 2, and we'll move on. And this is another game that I don't really have a comparison for on the Switch 1, that is Mario Tennis Fever. The Switch 1 did not get its first Mario sports game until after the first year with Mario Tennis Aces, I believe. But Mario Tennis Fever has obviously come out in the first year of the Switch 2. And I think this game is fantastic, you guys. I think this is the best Mario Tennis has ever been mechanically. There's just so much strategy when it comes to the rackets. The characters all play differently. The rackets add so much strategy in terms of what racket you want to pick and play against your opponent. There's just so much to do in this game, and it feels complete. That's the thing. With a lot of the sports games on the Switch 1, the Mario sports games, they didn't feel complete at launch because they would come out and they drip feed you content over time for free. Like, yeah, it was free, but the game just didn't feel complete at launch, and sometimes I would put the game down and I didn't want to come back to it after they would release updates. So it's really nice to have a game that feels complete at launch. So many characters, so many rackets, so many courts, you know, tons of different modes to play. The adventure mode, yeah, it's not good. The single player adventure mode is boring and is a glorified tutorial. There are some fun mini games in there, but overall, it's really not where the core of this gameplay is. You might like the Game Boy games more, like the Mario Tennis Game Boy games more with its RPG mode and all that, but I really think in terms of pure just mechanics and Mario Tennis gameplay, this is the best Mario Tennis game for me. I love it. I think it's fantastic. And it is an exclusive for the Switch 2. Another one added to the list. Another great game to have for the first year of the Switch 2. Another kind of surprise release, similar to Animal Crossing, was Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. This is just the Switch 1 version that I have here, but the Switch 2 got a Switch 2 version of Xenoblade Chronicles X. And during the Switch 1's first year, they got Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which was a pretty huge release. So Xenoblade is a gigantic RPG franchise for Nintendo now. It's crazy to think that at one time, Xenoblade fans had to really almost beg for Xenoblade Chronicles to get localized on the Wii. And now it's one of their biggest franchises in terms of RPGs goes. And from what we can tell, it sells pretty well because they keep coming out with new ones. But Xenoblade Chronicles 2, brand new game. That's what you can say about it for the Switch 1. This was a brand new game to come out at launch. I actually haven't put a lot of time into these games, so I don't have a lot to say about them, but I know people love the Xenoblade games, and they love Chronicles X, they love Chronicles 2. I will say, I think people say that this is probably the weakest Xenoblade game. Correct me if I'm wrong, obviously I haven't played them, but that's what I hear. But even the weakest Xenoblade game is good, from what I know. The Switch 2 edition of Chronicles X pretty much just boosted the frame rate, added a resolution bump. I heard it's not like the best Switch 2 edition either, but it's fairly cheap and, you know, something to add to the first year of the Switch 2. This would be a port on the Switch 2. We'll count this as a port, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was a exclusive for the Switch 1, so a really cool bonus for the Switch 1's first year. And now we get to the latest release as of the time of this recording for the Switch 2, and maybe its biggest one in Pokemon Pokopia. Wow. This game is just making a splash right now. Everybody is playing this game. It's hard to even find like a physical copy on store shelves right now. I'm sure that'll change in the future, but right now, only being about a week after its release, wow, it's hard to find, and it's an amazing game. I absolutely love it. I do have Snipper Clips Plus here. There's not really too much to compare with these two games, but I didn't have anywhere else to compare Snipper Clips with. But Snipper Clips was a launch title on the Switch 1. It came out digitally first, and then this Snipper Clips Plus came out physically a little bit later, also in its first year. So this Plus version also did come out in the first year of the Switch. Snipper Clips was a great game. This was a fantastic game to play with the two Joy-Cons. I think it was a really cool way to show off the multiplayer aspect of the Switch 1. Fun game, really fun game. I enjoyed it, and it's made by the same developers that made Crow Country, which was a really great survival horror game. So it's fun that they went from Snipper Clips to Crow Country. But yeah, fun game, really cool. But Pokopia, man. I did not think this would be a game for me when they first showed it off. I'm not a huge fan of builder-style games. Like, I have never really gotten into Minecraft. I've never gotten into the Dragon Quest Builders games, anything like that. So I was kind of I was a little hesitant going into Pokopia. But I picked it up, started playing it, and it's been really hard to put down. I think the thing I like about Pokopia is there's a lot of structure in what you do. They give you a lot of quests, a lot of missions to go through, so it's really fun in that way. And then the building stuff you can kind of do later on your own when you want. making these different habitats for these Pokemon is something that I didn't know like how fun it would be either. And that part of the game is so cool. It's almost like catching them all in a different way. It's like you have all these different habitats to create, and you're catching all the habitats, or like creating all these habitats, and then all the interactions the Pokemon have, the way the writing is just done, it's so good. Pokemon Pokopia is going to be an absolute smash hit on the Switch 2. It's going to sell like crazy. Already sold 2.2 million according to Nintendo and Pokemon Company. Wow, this is absolutely a system seller for the Switch 2, and just anecdotally, I went to a couple stores recently. No Switch 2s on the shelf, no copies of Pokopia on the shelf, and I haven't seen that since the launch month of the Switch 2. The console has been readily available since then, and since Pokemon Pokopia came out, it's just going to be harder to find. So, amazing game. It's going to be a system seller. Pokemon Pokopia, an exclusive for the Switch 2. Snipper Clips, also an exclusive for the Switch 1. So, 2 more exclusive games being added to their systems, and 2 really fun ones. And finally, we have a couple more games on the Switch 2 that have not come out yet as of the time of this recording, but we'll talk about them anyway. First up being Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, plus Meet Up in Bella Bell Park. Mario Wonder is an amazing 2D Mario game. It's absolutely the evolution that the new Super Mario Bros. Series needed. I love the new Super Mario Bros. Games as well, but Mario Wonder is kind of like in a class of its own as far as I'm concerned. There's just so much going on, so much fun stuff. And the Bella Bell Park DLC, I guess if you want to call it DLC, that they're adding to the Switch 2 Edition, seems like it's going to be a lot of fun too. It's going to add a lot of multiplayer mechanics and multiplayer modes, and it's going to add some single player stuff as well. So this seems like a fun addition to the Switch 2's library for the first year. It is a port. We're going to count it as a port. Again, even though it has new content like the other Switch 2 editions, we're going to count it as a port for the Switch 2's first year. And then there's Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. From what I can tell, probably the final release for Nintendo for the first year of the Switch 2. And actually, when I'm recording this, they recently just released a new trailer for the game. It's going to be coming out in May, just a couple weeks before the end of the first year of the Switch 2. And I think this game looks really cool. It certainly looks better than Yoshi's Crafted World, in my opinion. No offense to Crafted World, I think that's kind of somewhat of a mid-Yoshi game, unfortunately. And Mysterious Book, love the art style, love what it's trying to do when you're as in trying to like add all these different enemies to your book, kind of, in like almost like a Pokemon way, where you could catch them all in your Pokedex, but your book instead. Yoshi and the Mysterious Book looks really cool. Obviously can't say too much because it hasn't come out yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And this is another brand new exclusive game for the Nintendo Switch 2, so we'll add it to the exclusive side for the Switch 2. And there you have it. That was a comparison of the games that Nintendo released on the Nintendo Switch 1 during its first year and the Nintendo Switch 2 during its first year. If you guys were keeping score, the Switch 2 had 9 ports or cross-gen titles and 9 true exclusives, and the Switch 1 had only 5 ports or cross-gen titles, but only 8 true exclusives. So the Switch 2 has had 18 total games during its first year, while the Switch 1 only had 13. So, you know, going through those games, like, I really do think the Switch 2's first year has been fantastic in terms of releases by Nintendo, and honestly, including third parties as well. We didn't talk about that in this video, but there's been so many great third-party releases for the Switch 2 that, you know, weren't possible on the Switch 1. So really, really great first year as far as I'm concerned. You could say, obviously, the Switch 1, Nintendo was still developing games for the 3DS during that time. So they did have resources working on those 3DS games as well. But a lot of those were ports and not a ton of new games after the Switch came out. But we're comparing what we're comparing. We're comparing the Switch 1 to the Switch 2 here. That is a valid thing to bring up, I think. I think it is valid to say that Nintendo still had the 3DS as part of their arsenal, if you want to call it that. So they still were developing games. And on the Switch 2, they focused solely on the Switch 2. So you are able to get out some more content on this platform. And the Switch 2 does have stuff coming for the rest of 2026 as well. There's things like Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, which is slated for 2026. There's things like Pokemon Winds and Waves, which is set for 2027, which looks like it'll be great. And then there's even other games like Splatoon Raiders that was announced. That could actually be a summer game. Splatoon always feels like a summer game to me, so July or August could be when Splatoon Raiders comes out. I initially thought that might come out during the first year as well, but it doesn't seem like it's going to make it. But yeah, really, really fun to compare the first year of both the systems. And both systems, no matter what you think, I think both systems have had incredible years, and the Switch 2 has had an incredible year. So I'm just having fun. I'm happy playing all these games, and I was happy playing all those games on the Switch 1. I'm just going to have fun, you know? You should have fun too. If you haven't bought a Switch 2 yet, that's totally okay. I think waiting is okay to, to have more games be available that you want to play. Nothing wrong with that at all, but if you've seen this comparison and that has kind of changed your mind, maybe keep your eye out for a Switch 2 one of these days if you can pick one up. Yeah, I'm going to continue enjoying my Switch 2. I hope you guys do as well. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments.